The Louvre attracts 9 million visitors a year, but 80% of them come above all for her. However, the Louvre is so much more than that. 35,000 works of art are on display in its galleries. Just imagine if a visitor spent 1 minute in front of each artwork, and at a rate of 8 hours a day, it would take them 2.5 months to see everything. But in this video, I'm mainly going to talk about paintings. So we'll leave aside memorable sculptures like the Venus de Milo and the Winged Victory of Samothrace. Since it was stolen in 1911, Leonardo da Vinci's masterpiece has undoubtedly been the most popular painting of all time. But even without spending 75 days wandering the halls of the Louvre, there are still a few works worth seeing before the Mona Lisa. Starting with the one located opposite the world's most famous portrait. A gigantic work that everyone turns their back on, Veronese's The Wedding Feast at Cana. With a surface area 164 times larger than the Mona Lisa, this work is nevertheless invisible. Commissioned by a monastery in Venice, it features 130 characters. Another major monument on the same floor is Jacques-Louis David's The Coronation of Emperor Napoleon I. This painting, as imposing as the previous one, was commissioned by Napoleon for his coronation in the Church of Notre Dame. The cathedral was in a deplorable state following the French Revolution. David therefore concealed its decorations under immense curtains and a few blocks of cardboard imitating marble. Paradoxically, the painting is called The Coronation of Emperor Napoleon I, when it actually depicts the moment when the Empress is crowned. In his sketches, David had represented Napoleon crowning himself, but faced with the rather unaesthetic result of the pose, he revised his intention to crown Josephine. Upstairs in the Sully wing, you'll find paintings by the master of chiaroscuro, Georges de la Tour. His most famous work takes place in a tavern around 1640. The cheat with the ace of diamonds plunges us into a tale of swindling and class struggle. On the left, a cheat and his accomplice. On the right, two players from a higher social class compare the quality of their fiver. He is engrossed in his game, convinced he can win. She has a look of doubt. The cheat, for his part, adopts a nonchalant air, but his left hand reveals his intentions. His accomplice gives him a knowing look, seeking his approval. In the West, we read from left to right, and this continues until the artist's signature, most often in the lower right corner. Except here, the painter signs under the cheat's elbow. Isn't this a way for him to identify with the manipulator?
I fold! This game is rigged! What are you
Let's leave aside Georges de la Tour's manipulations and turn our attention to another essential work in the Louvre. Let's head to the Richelieu wing for a painting even smaller than the Mona Lisa. The Lacemaker by the Dutch artist Johannes Vermeer is smaller than an A4 sheet of paper. From the same series as his Milkmaid, which everyone knows since it appeared on yogurt pots, the Lacemaker is as meticulous as the art of lace-making demands. Vermeer's smallest work alternates between precision and simplification, with barely suggested forms. Some shapes appear blurred, as if by a camera lens. 170 years before its invention. Let's move on to larger-scale works. Back to the first floor in the Denon wing to rediscover Eugène Delacroix's classic Liberty Leading the People. 3 days of riots, 1830. Notre Dame, we're definitely in Paris, no doubt about it. The people are rising up against King Charles X, who has issued 4 ordinances favourable to the ultra-royalists. But 37 years after guillotining their king, Louis XVI, this reversal is unacceptable. Parisians blanket the capital with tricolour flags and call for revolt. They erect barricades in the narrow streets of Paris to confront the royal troops, who have orders to use their bayonets. These 3 days of rioting ended with the storming of the town hall and the king's abdication. Delacroix finished his painting in barely 3 months. In a letter to his brother, he confided in him.
I have undertaken a modern subject, a barricade, and if I have not conquered for the fatherland, at least I will paint for it.
This painting sparked Victor Hugo's inspiration to write Les Misérables, and it would inspire future revolts as it permeated popular culture. Right next door, and equally romantic, Theodore Géricault also offers us his masterpiece, the Raft of the Medusa. It shares the same pyramidal structure as Liberty Leading the People, but tells an even more compelling story. In 1816, the French frigate La Medusa set sail for Senegal. Its captain, appointed for political reasons, was far from popular. It had barely sailed for years. En route, it made serious mistakes and the ship ran aground on a sandbank off the coast of Mauritania. There weren't enough lifeboats for everyone, so a gigantic raft was hastily constructed to accommodate the 147 extra people. The lifeboats put to sea again, laboriously towing the raft. But very quickly the raft fell behind the lifeboats. It drifted. The ropes had mysteriously been cut. Under a blazing sun and without wind, the raft no longer moved forward. It drifted on the waves of the Atlantic. On board, tension mounted. The lack of water and food became acute. Some committed suicide, others mutinied and tried to gain space by throwing the weakest overboard. The days passed. Cannibalism became the only recourse for the emaciated survivors, drawing on their last reserves of strength. The raft was intercepted 13 days later, with only 15 survivors on board. The others had died of hunger, thirst, madness, or violence. And finally, here is another painting that deserves to be seen, at least as much as the Mona Lisa, the Turkish Bath, by the French painter Jean-Auguste Dominique Ingres. In the 19th century, French painters were fascinated by the Orient. Ingres, who also painted the Grand Odalisque, created the Turkish Bath, at over 80 years old. Initially, the painting was rectangular, as evidenced by this photograph taken by Charles Marville in 1859. Then Ingres transformed it into a tondo, a circular work, as if the octogenarian were observing the scene through a telescope. The painting was bought by a relative of Napoleon III, who, under pressure from his wife, brought it back a few days later. The work was then purchased by a Turkish diplomat, who already owned Courbet's The Origin of the World in his collection, now at the Orsay Museum. The Turkish Bath was finally purchased by the Louvre in 1911, the very year the Mona Lisa was stolen. Full circle.